welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we are taking a look at Conflict of Heroes Storms of Steel, which is Cursed 1943 from Academy Games.
Armor goodness.
And this is the third edition. So the first edition is actually very, very old. Been about for a while. They revamped it like they did second edition, Awakening the Bear.
We've played second edition.
There was going to be a second edition of this,
Yeah.
and then it got pushed back, and then they came up with a third edition where they actually changed the rules quite significantly, and that's what this is. The product itself is very, very nice.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Massive counters, everything's great. You have these really thick-mounted geomorphic maps. The game comes with game trays from the company Game Trays.
Custom game trays, they're amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, they are amazing.
And it's, everything lines up nicely, and it's got its two-part oyster packaging. It's very, very nice. Which is kind of what you would expect from Academy Games. They don't make
they don't make a ton of games. When they make them well.
Yeah, and even the first edition of this game was still quite a nice product considering.
Yeah.
So they've kept that up. It's a great game. Now the third edition, which was between the second edition and the third edition, it was a long time coming. A lot of people waiting for this. Some people had given up hope completely, but it's finally here. The differences aren't. It's interesting. There aren't that many differences, but the differences are significant.
I believe it requires an entire, almost paradigm shift to think about. If you've played the other editions, that was the biggest struggle we had, was just kind of unlearning what we had learned and trying to figure out this new system.
And basically, they've really only changed one mechanic.
Which is,
and
I would agree with that.
It's wild how much it changes what you've got on the board.
Yeah.
It feels quite different. From the prior volumes and editions.
Like we had a conversation, and you were probably going to go into this, but I think that second edition that we played is more gamey. You can game the system, meaning you can kind of do certain things, leaving some units unmoved, kind of waiting for the prime time, and then go all out when you run out of APs, in essence.
Yes, and that reminds me very much of certain tabletop miniatures style games where it's you build your army and you either go for a few really good pieces or a lot of kind of crappy pieces, and you get into this whole, I'm trying to out-activate you.
Right.
You use up all your stuff, and
so then I got 7 guys free.
I've got a bit of freedom to do what I want safely. That was an aspect of the second edition.
But they've tried to move away from that.
Yeah, and
you had made the comment that Uwe had mentioned to you.
Yeah, he's sat down with a lot of kind of military industry people from different institutions, and they tried to move away from something that was a more of a gamey system like that to something that, in theory, was a bit more realistic, a little bit more chaotic in a way. Or I don't mean chaotic in that sense. Unpredictable. You can't.
Yeah, you can't look at the battlefield and say, okay, these guys are going to go first. Then I can swoop them and I can. Knock them out.
The second edition, you had a lot of control. You had basically everyone would do exactly what you told them when you told them to do it, which that's not how real combat plays out.
Right.
This system attempts to replicate that. Everyone's going to do kind of what you tell them the first time.
Right.
But after that, you start getting into, they might do something else, or they might not. And a lot of times they won't.
Well, they might be able to do another action, or even the same action again.
Yeah.
But you have to actually make an activation roll. You have to kind of check to see if they haven't spent their strength or their energy or even their understanding.
And the strength or the value of those checks is based on what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, for example, moving.
A little easier.
Drive a tank, you got to roll, it's this 20% chance. It's very easy to move. But once you shoot, if you wanted to shoot again, it's very challenging to be able to do that because the roll to not be spent once you shoot is quite high.
Yes.
So the way that whole system is managed is very interesting. But that's really the core difference, is how you activate units. Because it used to be I would activate a unit, and I spend all my points,
Yep.
and then they're done. And then here it's much more action-based.
Yeah.
I take one action with one guy, and then I check to see whether or not he's spent. And if he's fine,
He can do another action next turn.
but I don't do it immediately.
Right.
It goes to your turn,
Yep.
you do an action. And then I can still use him on my turn. It's a bit more back and forth in that way,
Yeah.
which I think keeps the pace of the game a bit quicker.
Yeah.
Instead of me doing like 2 or 3 things.
Right.
I do one, you do one, I do one, you do one.
Well, for example, I think a good example of that is, an infantry unit of some kind or an engineer trying to move up on a tank. You can't run the entire 4 or 5 hex distance,
Yeah.
get on the tank, and then open, whatever, a hand grenade or a flamethrower. It's a combination of, well, you got to move 1 hex, see if you can continue going, and then I get an opportunity to then fire on you.
Yes.
But I also have to make that roll again, or guess what? I'm dead in the water.
And
I can't do anything. So I think it actually ends up representing that very well.
Well, and what that also does is it removes the need for all these extra opportunity fire rules, because your movements are broken down. You'll be able to move consistently because the roll's easy to make.
A 1 or a 2.
But you still you do it progressively through a number of actions as it passes back and forth between you.
Well, and I liked how tank movement, some of the tanks, heavier tanks were, you always get 1 hex, but then some of the tanks got a bonus hex and even 2 bonus hexes.
Yeah, you get the medium and light tanks could move 2 or 3 extra hexes.
So I liked the way that worked out.
Yeah.
So, but it boils down to there's a risk in every type of action.
Yes.
There's a risk that unit will be spent. So you have to take that risk. And there are times where you have to ask yourself, is this pot shot worth it? Because I may have to roll a 5 or higher on a die that has 2 1s and a couple of 3.
Yeah, it's
a weighted die.
Weighted D10 that's really, really cool.
So there's 2 5s, there's 2 1s. There's only 1 6 7, and there's nothing higher than a 7.
Nope.
Right? So it's a weighted die. And that's, you've got to ask yourself, is this action really worth it?
And I think that is one of the things they were going for when they implemented this system. It made you make much more conscious and meaningful decisions. Because before you'd I've got 8 action points. I'm going to spend 5 of them to attack, and then I'm going to spend 3 to move 3 spaces. Here it's alright, I really need to take this shot.
Yeah.
But if I take that, I won't be able to move probably.
Yeah,
So
because you're
then-
going to fail it.
So then do I move first, which is going to expose myself,
Yeah.
and then take a better shot later? The way that it works
Yeah.
out is very, very interesting. It's amazing how just that activation system changes entirely how the game feels and plays.
I feel like it's a totally different game. Now,
Honestly.
overall, the system hallmarks are still there. One of our favorite things is the chit draw cup.
The damage markers, it's the best part. The hits are so fun.
There's 15 chits in 1 cup, and they range from killed, destroyed, to pinned, unnerved, immobilized. And your main gun's destroyed.
And you stick them under your counter, and so it's hidden, so I've shot you, I know you've taken some damage, but I have
don't know
no
what.
idea what I've done to you. Until you try to fire with that thing that's got a reduced number, or I try to shoot you and you have an increased defense because you're hunkered down. That
part of the game, and in the second edition, was my favorite part.
Yeah,
because it just throws in that aspect of, I don't really know how I've affected the guy.
Yeah.
I saw that I hit, but I don't know what I did to him.
Yeah.
And that to me is very well. So once again, the hallmarks of the system are there.
Yes.
The firing is pretty much the same. You've got a frontal, you've got a soft target and an armored target, whatever. I can't remember what they're referred to.
So,
as in the rules,
you have soft target and hard target, so it's infantry and deployed guns versus tanks, basically. So you have different values for those.
You have a flank armor and a frontal armor value, or a defense value. They're kind of twisted on the counter.
Yeah, I don't know why they
And I don't know why,
But that's...
You would think the front-facing part of the defense would be that part of the defense.
Yeah.
When I'm shooting you in the back, to me it's the lower part, but no, it's not. It's the higher boxed part. So that's an interesting, but all those elements are there in the system. I don't think the terrain changed. I don't think...
No,
But that new activation system really has just changed the game.
It changes completely how you think about certain aspects of it, how, because then, especially with things like doing a group attack.
Yes.
Boy, that becomes, it
very risky.
You'd spend all these points and it would do it, but now it's like, you might roll a group move, and then they're all spent, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. and I think a clarifying point we need to make sure everybody understands is, when you take an action, that action is going to go off every time.
Yes.
You're either going to shoot, you're going to move. Those are always going to go off. What may not go off is your ability to do another action next turn. So that I need to make sure that's clear, that when you decide to shoot, you're going to roll for your shot. You're going to miss more often than not. That was our experience.
Well,
bad rolling, some of the tough values. But then you're going to do that spent check, and you're going to decide if you're spent or if you're going to be available for the next turn. So that's why those group moves are so risky. Because you could sit there and take 5 individual shots with, say, a group of 5 tanks, each separately, or you can decide, you know what, I'm going to fire one time with my lead unit who's a 10, and I'm going to add my 3 or 4 bonuses from the, and you know what, I may cock that roll up and it'll spend all those guys.
Right, and the choices come from your tactical decisions as well. So, for example, you got a group of 5 T-34s, and they're going up against a couple Panthers.
Tigers or Panthers,
with very strong frontal armor.
Yep.
You're like, well, I almost have to do that group attack to get a decent attack roll.
Because more often than not, I was looking at my modifiers without spending cap points, which is another part of the system that's here still.
Yep.
I was going to have to roll 11 or 12 on most of my attacks on 2d6. That's hard.
Very.
But if I had a group fire, all of a sudden I'm only having to roll 7 or 8.
Well, it's only an 8.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
And then I throw a cap point or 2 in there. All of a sudden, I only have to roll 5. I can do that. But
then they're all going to become spent immediately, and you're like...
potentially.
Yeah.
If you fail the spent check. And that's the... And how many times did I do that? I'd move them as a group. That's a low risk.
Very low risk.
You have to roll basically a 1 to fail that. So I felt very confident that I could move my guys together, but when it came to attacking, because that you have to roll a 6 or higher, and that's hard. So really change the system. It does make you think about those things.
It's really, really, really cool what they've done. How it morphed the system so significantly is quite impressive in a way.
Yeah. It has changed that focus, I think, to tell even a greater story about infantry and small tactical combat. This is tank on tank mostly, but it changes that narrative. It's more, I hate to say it, it's a little more realistic, I would think.
And which is what I think they were going for.
Yeah.
And whether,
realistic.
How realistic outcomes and stuff are a different question. But I think that's what they were going for. But with all that said, this game is entirely backwards compatible with the second edition rules.
We could use the second edition rules, play the system the way we've always played it. If the counters don't change, everything, and that's okay. You can do that if you really like that system.
If you don't like the new system, you just ignore it and you just play the old rules. Which is also nice that they've done that for people who are diehard fans of second and first edition of this game.
This Conflict of Heroes system is very good.
Yes,
it's one of my favorites. It's very simple. I would not call this introductory.
No.
But I think it's a little bit more introductory than some of the others that we've played.
Yeah, what's nice is most of the information is out in the open.
Yeah.
It's not like card driven or anything like that. So, which adds a whole extra set of rules to some games, which can hurt introductory level games. This is, most of the things are on the play aids. It's some numbers and rolling dice. If someone sat down and was knowledgeable and taught you this game, you could do it.
Oh yeah,
it wouldn't be massively challenging.
I don't know that the rules overhead is that difficult.
No,
I just think the counters can be slightly confusing. As far as there's a lot there, so if you're not familiar with this type of thing, you might be like, "Why are there 7 numbers on this counter?"
Yeah.
Well, they all have a different, attack, move, range, frontal armor, back armor versus armor, and fire value versus armor, and fire value versus infantry. So It's pretty simple once you get it.
Yes. What I'll do is I'll show you the board, we'll show you the new changes and how that works, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the map. This is one of the geomorphic maps. There's a bunch in here. But we'll start with the core difference in the game. It used to be that you would have a unit or a group, and you would activate that unit. The unit would have a number of action points, and you would spend them based on how much it costs to do anything. It was really simple in that way. Once you'd used up all your action points, the unit was spent. Okay. In this game, you take alternating actions, and everything here is spent because we finished the game and I lost, but we'll just flip a couple of these over. So, for example, the Russian player takes one singular action. So this move value here is a 1. I'll kind of show you here. So there's a number of values here. We have in the top left-hand corner that 5 is its attack value, as in that's how many action points it takes to shoot. The 1 is how many action points it takes to move. And then down here you have different attack values and defensive values in a range. So if I wanted to shoot, it costs 5 action points. And instead of spending action points, what I do is I would take the action and I roll on this chart down here. So because it costs 5, I have to roll higher than a 5, basically. So I roll this die and I roll the 1. So what that means is I take a shot, I fail my roll, I become spent. So why that's important is because, well, you might want to move. Well, moving costs 1, because there's the 1 value here. It's a 20% failure chance. So I'm going to roll a die, and I rolled a 5. So we're good. So I'm able to move, and you always move 1 hex, but they have this bonus movement symbol, so they're going to move twice. And that's my action. Then it passes to the other player. They're going to take an action. Well, the Tigers are going to attempt to move. So they're going to move 1 hex, and they're going to pivot. So they're going to move 1 hex, and then we'll pivot this way so we can kind of shoot each other. They're also going to roll, because a move costs 1, a 20% failure chance. Great, we pass. So then it moves back to the Russian player. Russian player says, well, I'm going to shoot with this guy. Well, now he's got that 5 value, so there's an 80% kind of a failure chance on this. I take my shot, then I roll, and I roll a 3, so he's going to become spent. So, it's, do you do your moves first if you need to get in position, then roll, or do you take your 1 shot because you might die? There's really neat tactical choices here. When you get into shooting, you have these 2 values. Here we got a 5 and a 9 on our KV-1. 5 in red is the HE value against soft targets. 9 is the AP value against hard targets. Tiger is obviously a hard target. So you basically take 9... and you subtract that from the 21, which is their frontal armor value, because we're in the front arc here. 21 minus 9 is basically we have to roll a 12 to do anything. And I don't even think we can hit with... well, yeah. So you roll the dice, and you'd roll a 2d6 to try and do anything. You miss. And then you make that check... and you say, not only did I miss, but I also spent myself, which is the worst possible outcome, right? And then the Tiger's going to shoot you back, so they're going to roll a 3 or less on their spent check. Oh no, they failed as well, and that's very typically me. But basically, you do this back and forth, and it's gauging, well, how risky is it to do these expensive actions? Rallying units costs 5, shooting these anti-tank guns is a 3, so there's a 50% failure chance. For the anti-tank guns to move up back here, these have like a 4 or 5 move values, and that represents how much more difficult it is to have men move that, or limbering and unlimbering. It takes a lot more effort, and you become spent to move an anti-tank gun. Versus a tank which has a 1, it's easy to drive because you've got the engine turned on and you just press the go button, basically. This aspect is very, very neat, but it changes entirely how you look at the board, shifting actions back and forth. I might have a singular infantry unit. They don't have a move bonus, so one action to move. I roll my spent die. Oh, look, I'm still fresh. And then it goes to the Russian turn. They're like, well, I'm going to take a shot with this guy. So they're going to roll their dice. They have a 4 value against my 13. So they needed to roll a 9. They missed. So they're going to roll. And they're going to fail. So they become spent. Well, then I can roll to move him again. So I'm gonna move 1 space. And I'm good. I'm still fresh. But you see how instead of having separate opportunity fire rules that you have in every other tactical game, opportunity fire is built into how you take one action. It's built into the kind of flow and turn structure of the game. So you remove all those extra rules that you would have needed for that, which I think is very cool. But instead of it's one unit taking a bunch of actions, doing something, and you can out-activate each other, there is an aspect of that, but you take these actions back and forth. It's unknown how many actions each unit's going to get. You might get very, very lucky. You might have a Tiger Tank with a 3 value. It's a 50% that you're going to fail, but they might keep rolling above that, keep being able to shoot and keep the battlefield pinned down, or they might mess up their first roll and miss, and they're spent immediately. You might be trying to move a bunch, and you might, keep rolling, and you can move really, really far sometimes because you've got the action points, but you might move 1 space, and you might roll a 1 and be very unlucky, and you kind of bog down, basically, and you can't move anymore. It totally changes how the game plays out. But that's really the core of it. You get victory points for killing each other, you get victory points for some of these control markers. You'll have a deck of battle cards, which have all sorts of different things. So you might get a free action on a spent guy. You might get to re-roll one of your dice. You can add 3 action point value to an action someone's taken. And so I did that to Grant. He was attempting to move some T-34s. I played that card on him, so instead of it being a 1 with a 20% failure chance, it now became a 4 with a 60% failure chance.
And I didn't move. Stopped in the tracks.
He failed, so he moved the whole group, and all 5 of them became spent. That card is now something that's very powerful if used correctly. And there's a bunch of these that do all sorts of different things. It's a great combined arms game. This one gives you a ton of tanks. You get all the nice big tigers and panthers. And it's a blast to play. So what we'll do, we'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map and some of the new activation system. It adds an entirely different flavor to the game. Mm-hmm. But for me, it retains what I like about the second edition, which is it is still very fun. Yeah. And the games do not drag on. No. These games are usually fast and furious. Yep. And Uwe likes his games to be fun.
Well, it was interesting. We talked about this at the beginning of our play of this specific scenario, but you're lined up within firing range already. Yeah. I like that. There's times that we play scenarios and I'm like, okay, the first 2 turns are me simply moving. Now, some people get that. Some people really like that.
Right, you get to set up your positioning and all that.
I'm okay with maneuvering, but don't make me move 3 turns worth of to get into the action.
Sometimes you just want to line them up and shoot them.
Just get us into it. And there was still enough tactical decision in this scenario that allowed us to really do some thinking about how we wanted to attack each other.
But generally speaking, with the scenarios they've got in here, a lot of the firefights are very furious. Yeah. You're all on top of each other, shooting away, which is really nice. Just to, you set up a game, you're right into it already, which is cool. But yeah, it's fun. I enjoy this system. Yep. You get some great moments of narrative where the one guy keeps making his spent check roll, and he shoots, and then he shoots again, and he shoots again. Like, how many times guy, did I give him, the red star of the Union?
I think I shot 4 or 5 times in a row with my 57mm anti-tank gun. Yeah, I didn't hit, but I kept firing. But it was fun,
and it's so unlikely with the odds. Yeah, but you get a really cool flavor of narrative moment from that.
Then again, I will point out your engineer. This was hilarious. Yeah, your engineer unit moved up on my tank. Yes, after he was spent, so he couldn't fire on you or even move away. You moved 3 hexes. You made all your rolls. that final fourth hex during the movement,
Yeah.
you failed it, and you were spent.
So it couldn't attack. And
you couldn't attack.
There's a 20% chance of that failing.
And it happened.
I failed it. I'm like, oh.
And I belted out with laughter because it was just so typical you.
Yes.
I always tell myself, I'm protected because Alexander's rolls are going to be so bad. But, yeah, the game's great. The parts of the system I enjoy, these cards are always fun, the battle cards. They're just kind of although yours were terrible, reroll a die or get a bonus or activate a unit that's already been activated. Those are very cool.
And there's a bunch of them, and you only use a certain amount in the scenario, so it's a bit more tailored for flavor. You're not going to get like off-board naval artillery in the middle of Russia, for example. They'll
say like 1 through 10, 15, and 18.
Yeah, even the way they see those can change. Give you some cool flavor and add some twists into your game as well.
So I like that. The cap system, the command action points is always fun.
Yeah.
You spend one or two of those to give yourself a +1 or a +2 bonus. You can never spend more than two. And those are always nice. So you're trying to manage that and then man these damage counters. The best part. Best part in the game.
Yeah, and I think that what I like about that, it's this, I don't know what I've done to you, right?
Yeah.
So you got that hidden damage. But with the activation system, they've also got, I don't know quite how much I'll be able to do as well. And they've almost doubled down on that level of
But it makes
unknown.
for some very interesting, chaotic moments. When your gun's knocked out, your main gun on your tank, and all of a sudden you're driving up to try and get in range to shoot at the infantry. That tells you something. I'm like, why isn't he firing? Oh, his gun's damaged.
Yeah.
And that one says specifically no rally. You cannot get rid of it.
Oh, yeah. You broke your 75mm. It's not being fixed.
And you get, if you get two of those, you're dead. There are some of those. You draw one out, it's destroyed.
Yeah, I had a couple of those.
You did.
Super fun.
Just very fun. And once there's 3 or 4 markers out on the board, all of a sudden that pool's getting low. And all of a sudden that destroyed marker is now only one of 8 chits that you might draw because there's 4 or 5 out on the board, and that makes for some nice tension.
Yeah, I never don't enjoy, which is double negative, our Conflict of Heroes games. Right. It's always fun. Storms of Steel is very tank heavy. It's Kursk, as you might imagine. So this scenario was almost entirely tanks and anti-tank guns. I had a couple, pioneers, but
the armor on those Panthers and Tigers is wicked.
Yeah, you've got really strong frontal armor, and so you can kind of sit there and bounce a few hits, and shoot a couple of T-34s.
Yep.
And I love the nuance on the counters. Like your T-34s, you have an 80% chance that they'll be able to take only one shot.
Yeah.
But the Tigers, you have a 50% chance that they'll only be able to take one shot. So
they could be shooting 2 or 3 times
and it's
round.
Like, and it accounts for things like, well, they had better gunnery training and better optics on them, quite simply.
A little better engineering as well, and T-34s were just thrown together and didn't always work the way they're supposed to.
You could hardly see. They had like a single periscope, whereas the Tiger optics were like off the chain.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that that's boiled down into a number on a counter, but it accounts for some really cool historical variation.
Yeah.
You have to employ your tactics entirely differently as either side, especially with the tanks. And it works. It gives you good flavor, you get a good story, you get a good narrative.
Yeah.
It is also very fun as well. The rulebook's pretty good. There's a lot of different examples and explanations and things. They've really kind of gone above and beyond with that as well.
It's a very good system.
Yeah, I think everyone's been waiting for this for a while because the first edition, the second edition never came out. They came up with the third edition, called it good, because you can just put it back to second edition.
Yeah.
So it's great for me. I loved it.
Yeah. One other comment I want to make: the art inside the rule book and the scenario book is Matt White's. Matt is a kind of a fledgling game designer. He's designed 2 or 3 different tactical level games.
So you got like the Panzer IV and the little infantryman there.
Boy, just fantastic. And we've interviewed him a couple of times regarding some of his games and his art style. But he picked up this contract to do this 3rd edition. I'm not sure he did all this.
Nope, this is the original artwork from all
But the internal unit silhouettes and just excellent job. It adds to the theme and the feel of the game. So shout out to Matt. Nice work.
But yeah, I have a blast playing this. I would set up another scenario right away and play it.
Well, there's no doubt.
And I think the third edition, to me, it's worth getting the third edition because you have the option to use these new rules.
Yep.
But you can also use the second edition rules if that's if you want to do that. This gives you the option to do both. Although the new ones, it's very cool. It's definitely worth giving it a go.
Well, and you get these slick container holders. I mean, they're really nice.
Yeah.
You can't say enough for how nice that is.
You get like 3 of these, and they've all got the little containers in them. These kind of clip on.
They're not going to come loose.
No. And the second edition games, like Guadalcanal and all that, it was one big tray in the bottom, and it had a lid, but if you store on the side, for me, it comes off sometimes.
Yeah.
It's still really nice, but these are a little bit nicer. They got some different trays and compartments for all the cards and stuff like that as well.
So that's a kind of a unnecessary part, but it's a nice addition to the system, to the package.
Yeah, it's nice of them to do that. I think.
Yeah.
You know, how many GMT trays do we buy in sticking games? It's always nice when they come with custom ones.
It is
for
really
them,
nice.
Right?
Yep.
So, Storms of Steel, Conflict of Heroes, 3rd edition. You're going to get a recommendation from me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would definitely give it 2 thumbs up. So
it's from Academy Games. Check it out from them. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.